Hit menu. Okay. Now exit. Now if you notice, it went to 450 clone. My mistake in telling you to change the name first. When you do a copy, it goes back to that 450 clone. So back to menu. Model name. Let's change the name again. Actually, we got the 450 there. So all we gotta do is put fly. Again, find the letter or number you want. Hold the menu button down. The next one's already L. I want a Y here. Y. Hold the menu button. There you go. 450 fly. Now you want to go back to the blank space. Move to the next letter. Hold it. Next letter. Hold it. Okay, so now we're 450 fly. Hit the menu. That saves it. Back out. And that's how you change the name and get the Turnigny 9X set up for our next step. I'll be back in a moment. Okay guys, the next thing we have to do in the radio is we have to set all the settings that they ask you to set before you even start wiring up the Flymentor. So we want to hit the menu button. You want to go over to now the setting bar instead of function, and on your reverses we'll hit the menu. You want to be normal on everything but the rudder. My rudder and gear were already set, the two channels, and like I said, I'm using my Align GP 750, so I do not want to touch my original settings from 450 clone, but everything else needs to be set to normal. I even set the auxiliaries to normal even though I'm not using them. That's where you can get in and use it to shut the Flymentor on or off, but I'm not using it. When I copied over my settings, whatever they are, change everything to normal. If you're using an external gyro, you leave the gyro alone and the rudder and the gear channel alone. You just leave them the way they were. Okay? Next, your throttle curve is just the standard throttle curve at 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100. That's the way it was with the 450. You can leave it at that. It doesn't matter. I'm also leaving my pitch curve the same, which was 0, 45%, 70%, 89%, and 100%. That helps the pitch build up real quick to make it light on its skids before I have high head speed. Alright, so I left that the same. Now your sub trims, you have to set it all zeros. If you notice, aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, gear, pitch, auxiliary, and auxiliary, all zeros. That's where those have to be set. Endpoints, all at 100. Everything, the aileron's 100, elevator, throttle, rudder, except, well, my rudder is 100 and 100, but my gear channel, I'm using my outside GP 750 external instead of the Flymentor's 3-axis gyro, so I left mine at 75% and 36%, but pitch and the two auxiliaries 100%. Throttle hold, I left my throttle hold active. I can use the switch to shut off the motor at any time. but when we install the Flymentor, I recommend you disconnect at least 2 wires off the ESC, if not all 3 of them. Auxiliary channel, I left the same. I still like using my knobs to adjust my pitch. That's me. You don't have to, but you also have to set up channel 5 as gear, because that'll still work your external gyro. Plus it also activates the gyro if you use the Flymentor, so it's basically the same. Okay, on the swash, we cannot use that. There's no mixing on the Heli 1, so it'll tell you. The DR and Expo, what they ask you to do in the instructions is the rudder is 100 DR and 5%. The aileron 100 DR, 5% Expo. Elevator 100% DR, Expo is 5%. And that's kind of it on that. Your trims, it looks like I got a couple of points on throttle, but that's okay. But they all should be at 0. You can trim, but I left my rudder alone because I'm using an external GP 750. But the rest should be all at 0s. I have a -2 on my throttle because of the throttle hold. But you can do some trimming once you get the Flymentor on while you're flying. Revo mix, you do not use. Failsafe, you do not use. I don't use it. You have the hover and throttle pitch, which I use. They work with the knobs in conjunction with the extra channels, so I can adjust my pitch. Of course, you have trainer. Display is for the contrast. My timer is set at 8 minutes 30 seconds, and it's activated. Gyro sense, some people like using the gyro sense instead of the gear. I do not. It's an inhibited, but if you do, the up rate is 100, down rate is 100, but I do not use it in Model GY. I set that up once to use for another heli. It seemed to work okay without the gear channel, but I've gone back to using the gear channel. And the stunt trim and Pro Mix you don't use with the Flymentor. Alright, so that was the next step. See, that's just a program mix, but we don't use that on Heli 1. So we exit out. Now your radio is completely set up, ready to go for the Flymentor. The next step will be installing the Flymentor. Okay guys, the next thing we need to do is install the Flymentor onto the 450. Let me move the radio. Program panel, move that out of the way for now. Alright, let's open up the KDS box. You'll notice it slides out of a sleeve, kind of like a DVD. It has a magnetic latch. Let's go over the parts. This is a 3-axis gyro. This is your secondary receiver, the Flymentor, and your CCD. Those are the 3 basic components. As you notice, I wrote front of helicopter on here because I've already put Velcro strips on the bottom to hold it in place, and that's so I could remember that that faces towards the front of the heli. Those are your basic components of the Flymentor. That's, you know, you receive that plus a CD, a connecting cable to go to your computer for Heliball and the software and all that. But like I said, I'm using the program card. I'm not going to use the computer software. We're going to do this back to basics. Alright, so what we have to do now, let me move up the heli, take the canopy off. If you want, take the blades off. Makes it a little easier. I left the battery in for weight. We'll remove that, get the canopy out of the way. Alright, and if you notice, there's the turnigny receiver. I'm gonna retain or keep the GP 750 gyro. I want to utilize that, and I have a digital rudder servo that I talked about earlier. If you notice, I've already cut a piece of Velcro to put on the side. I stuck it to the side of the 450 to carry the receiver. I also put some below. Some people use this for the gyro. I'm keeping my gyro here, but I needed another spot for the gyro, so I put some Velcro in here. That'll be for the 3-axis gyro. And I also put a piece of Velcro on the bottom for the CCD. Alright, so I just want to emphasize that don't really wire tie anything until we know that we're situated on where everything's going. It gets really tight with all the wiring because there is a lot of wiring. If you notice, to remind myself, I've already used the label maker and I labeled the connections that I need to know. But here we go. I did the RX first. It has 5 channels on it. I just want to let you know 4 is always blank anyways, and 5 I'm not using because I'm using my own gyro. So it'll just stick itself right to the Velcro. It's very easy to move out and in if I need to plug in all the servo wires. Now the 3-axis gyro, very simple. It's got an arrow on it. Same thing, this had below, it had an arrow on it. It means front of helicopter. You want to face the arrow and the arrow on the CCD to front of helicopter. You cannot see the arrow because I put Velcro on, but it is there. That's why I labeled it, to remind myself. But let's do the 3-axis gyro. It faces the front of the heli. Put it right in there. Squish it down on the Velcro. And that one's locked down. And there's all your control wires. Alright. Next piece is the CCD. I guess what this does, it's like a little mini camera. And it can tell, especially in grass, where its position is. So it'll hold position. What you want to do is see a main shaft. This wants to be as close as you can get to center. And I know the Pro helicopters, a friend of mine's got a Pro. It's very hard to get this in the center because there's a big hole in the center the way they built the heli. But with these old 450s, it has a spot, and you can get it really close. Alright, put it there, it's stuck on. Now this you want to get so it doesn't move around so much, so I'll be cutting some pieces of Velcro strips and I'll glue this a little tighter, but I'll leave it like that for now. Leave everything accessible. Alright, now the next thing you want to do, you have some connections to make from the gyro and the CCD to the main Flymentor unit. Okay, after you have everything mounted, you can use Velcro, wire ties. Just don't put a lot of pressure on these things, they seem to be sensitive. You need to snake through the connections from your 3-axis gyro, which is the bigger connector, and the CCD is a smaller connector. And right on the front of the Flymentor here, there's a little layout of instructions, which they should be. The black wire